listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Webtrends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI from their digital properties. Webtrends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed price contract, with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the testing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. Today, we're in conversation with our product director, Sandeep Shah, about his role in pre-sales meetings with potential clients. Sandeep joined us a couple of years after gaining his degree in computer science from Brunel University, and over the last 8 years, he's become the go-to guy around all things technical within our business. So you wouldn't normally expect the product director to attend pre-sales meetings. But here at Webtrends Optimize, we believe that our prospective clients value his input, and that in turn helps build strong, ongoing relationships. So, Sandeep, I know you do pre-sales along with both client services work and our own product development. So what makes pre-sales so different?
Yeah, it's very different. The intensity and the stakes on the line, I think, are probably one of the obvious things where they differ from each other. It's not lost on me what tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds, as our contracts can be, mean to a team that you're trying to employ and keep in work, what they mean to a growing business. All these things are important, and especially when you're at a director level, you are very aware of all of these kind of things. That the skills that you apply are, I guess, fairly similar in either of those scenarios. You're still expected to listen to people, adopt a decent understanding of what it is they're after, try and build some solutions for them, help solve their problems. But instead of doing it to people who you've been working with for 6 months or several years even, you're doing it to a room of mostly strangers with very little kind of, I'll come back to you in a few days once we work it out. Very much on the spot, we need an answer, and you've really got to be on top of your game for however long you're in that room.
Is pre-sales something that you really enjoy, part of the role?
Oh yeah, definitely. It is by far the single most challenging thing I do. Um, every aspect of the role, I guess, brings something different for it. On the product side, I guess you have the freedom to sit there and think openly about what the right thing is and undertake work which might sit with you for several weeks. But in pre-sales, it literally is who is the sharpest person. Can you understand people better than anybody else can? And do you understand the technology well enough to come up with solutions that they're either not thinking about or that they're sorely in need of?
Because to some degree, you're the face of the company. Obviously, when you're out there, you're the person who's seen as the guy with all the knowledge. Does that add extra pressure?
Yes, it does. Back when I first started doing these, which we're probably going back about 4 or 5 years now, it was terrifying. Especially if you imagine the stereotypical developer. I'm fairly introverted, not that chatty with people, much more focused around doing things than just having a chat. And I'm not into football, so we're not like sitting there having a chat about the game from last night or whatever. um and there are skills which, yeah, you need for pre-sales, those kind of interpersonal ones, which were fairly new to me. But the pressure of not just performing from a technical level when you are the technical resource there, but also can you get along with people, and that side of things is almost as important, I think, as the solution that you put forward. People want to see that you can work with them, and if they don't feel like they can, that alone is enough to rule you out of the picture as well.
So, having been involved in sales process myself, I know that we're not a company that delivers a PowerPoint presentation from slide 1 to 50 and go through it all. Could you just step through the process that you kind of find most comfortable and actually delivers the best results?
Yeah, I think. I mean, we still have slides, but they're more about supporting material for discussion than they are. Here is us having thought of everything, and we just want to talk at you for an hour. When we enter the room, I think the first 10, 15 minutes, probably longer if we can manage, is just trying to understand what people's problems are. That's why we're there at the end of the day. And the more people divulge to us, the more we're able to help them. If I don't know what your problems are, then sure, I can talk to you and tell you how great our tool is, but that's only worth so much. Whereas if I understand exactly what your problems are, what you're struggling with, why other tools might not be working for you, then it becomes a lot easier to say, right, to address your very specific problem, here's how we deal with that scenario.
So, when you're actually in a meeting, I'm sure that you go into a meeting with certain preconceptions. And I'm sure from the other side, our prospective clients have some preconceptions. What are the ones that really people have sitting in their heads, which they believe that, we can't do anything about?
Yeah, there are some awful ones, which again comes down to choice of tooling. And when you're reading Yahoo Answers or some help pages, and you get the not so wisdom of the crowd almost. Site speed is an interesting one because it comes up in most sales pitches that we do, um, and people are asking about site speed, getting at the problem, which tends to be content flickering. When that's really bad, everybody notices. It's terrible for UX. Um, so they're asking about site speed and trying to differentiate between 50 and 60 milliseconds or something, and saying, oh, these extra 2 kilobytes don't really seem necessary or something like that. In reality, the problem is content flickering, and that's nothing to do with site speed, really. Content flickering is a tag architecture problem. So it's trying to understand the root of why people are asking certain things, and where they think certain things are normal. Just trying to both point it out to them, convince them, and do it well enough, thoroughly enough that they can appreciate what we do and that it's not just another sales guy. That approach we've got away from a while ago. We're not that kind of glossy, slick-haired, salesman from 10 or 20 years ago. We don't do that. It is consultative, and we're we're trying to educate people. I think is probably the big one. When we do that and there is a reception to it, we know we're doing well.
So that's obviously in a good scenario, you manage to get over to the prospective client that what we've got is a good product. But have you ever been in a situation where you've struggled to gain that rapport, where you feel that the conversation hasn't flowed? And if you have done that, how have you managed to overcome that?
Oh, it's happened more than a few times. It really depends on who you're in the room with. Um, we've been in rooms sometimes where we'll ask questions and get no response. Sometimes, if you're in a room with 2 or 3 people at most, it's very easy to have a direct conversation where you get to look one person in the eye and get information out of them. Um, the more difficult pitches we've done are ones where there's 10, 15 people in the room, and everybody feels like they can blend in and not be singled out. So you're sat there kind of explaining something and saying, does it make sense? And it just falls on deaf ears almost. Um, Getting around that is a challenge, I think. The more questions you ask, the more you try and single people out where you can and say, look, explain your problems to me, because that's what we're there to do at the end of the day. The more information you manage to pry from people, the better a job we can do in these sales meetings.
So, um, given that you've been doing this for quite some time now, sitting in the pre-sales seat, let's call it that, there must be probably dozens of questions that you know the answers to. Are you still in a situation where you're still getting a couple of questions where you haven't quite got the answer?
Um, it happens less and less nowadays. If you'd have asked me that question 4 years ago, then absolutely. I used to walk away from every single engagement with clients, whether it's pre-sales, whether it's client services work, and say, "Oh, there's another thing I didn't know the answer to that I'm going to have to go away and learn about." But when you're in, most sales pitches that we do for several years, and because I'm involved in so much on the other side of things as well, there's knowledge I naturally have, not just from being in a sales pitch or having to go away and look something up, but because I'm actually building the product. These are things I should already have the answer to. So it happens less. Still the occasional curveball. Sometimes again that comes down to understanding the motivation. Why are you asking that question? Why is it even important? If after several years of doing this, people are asking you very obscure things, sometimes it is important to understand why. And that normally unlocks the answer to the problem anyway.
So, just a little outside of your role as kind of pre-sales support, you're also the product director that looks after product releases and things like that. Do you take the learnings and the questions that you're getting from these kind of pre-sales meetings to look towards building extra features and functionality into the product?
Oh, like absolutely. Having been with the company over its couple of incarnations over the last 8 years now, we went from a place where our old remote engineering team was very distanced from clients and customers. There are things we very sorely needed which never got built. So taking the reins of that side of things about 3-4 years back, there was no doubt in my mind that things would be different. Nowadays, I'll walk away from a sales pitch. Even in a sales pitch, we make it very clear to people the reason I'm there is not just to answer their questions, but if they have genuine feedback, I want to be the first person to hear it. If valid, I need to understand it well enough so I can go away and deal with that problem immediately. That's the reason we work to 2 week sprints, but I'm not planning a 6 month roadmap of ideas, despite several people asking me for one. If I get a worthwhile suggestion from someone today, I want that to be built in the next sprint or at most one sprint further down the line. I don't want it to be sat in a backlog for 3 months while we decide it's important to us. We're not short of things to do. It doesn't take long to plan most of the things that we want to do or to build them. But if I walk away from a meeting, I either want to be able to build it myself, as I have done on the train ride home after having been in some of these pitches and thought that's important, it's urgent, and I have the power to deal with it now. And being a dev definitely helps on that side of things. You at least feel capable of solving these problems firsthand. But also having a really, really short roadmap. So when these things come up, you go, right, okay, thank you for the suggestion, number one, but it will be dealt with quickly. And sometimes we've had feedback even from existing customers where within a day we'll go, oh, by the way, we've just hit release and that should be with you soon. Um, there are these kind of things, and that it's not. I hate the word agile sometimes. Like, oh, we're so agile, but being truly agile means no matter what you're in the middle of, you should be able to bend and flex and deal with things, and that's what we're trying to make happen.
So it sounds like it's almost the ultimate 360-degree customer feedback. You sit in front of a potential customer, they come up with an idea, you help build that idea, you take it back to the customer, and hopefully that customer then starts to use it and gives you feedback with regard to how good or how bad or how indifferent, which is absolutely fantastic. But just going back to the actual meetings that you're involved in, I'm sure that every meeting doesn't go as well as expected. Without naming any company names,
Yeah.
what, if any, have been disasters?
A few over the years. You know, we've had sales pitches where, you know, I remember being in so there was a meeting with me, one of our sales guys, and one person from a client where we were pitching for basically a large multinational, giant, well-known brand kind of contract. You know, it was huge, and we're meeting with the experimentation lead, and about 10 minutes into the meeting, they go, "Oh, something's broken on our side," and the guy needs to get up and leave. And he was gone for 45 minutes, I think, you know, of our sales pitch, and we're just sat there, and it's like, what are we doing here? When you when you're sat in a sales pitch, just waiting for people to come up, uh, yeah, that's very different. I would almost call it a disaster, except that it turned out okay, and we did okay at the end of it. But it was not good. We have technical issues as well. Um, I remember being in one, remember being in one of these pitches where it was like these, you know, gorgeous, brand new, refurbed offices, glass everything, giant TVs on the wall, two big 60-inch ones, I think, in a little meeting room. And we try and get them to work. Didn't work, couldn't work it out. Three different sets of IT people walking into our meeting in the middle of a conversation and saying, "Oh, we're just here to have a look at this and try and get it working for you." And, you know, in the course of an hour and a half or so, it's just hugely, you know, a massive distraction. Um, we've had that. We've had fire alarms. If you can imagine London office buildings, quite high, 10, 15 stories, and having to evacuate the entire building because it was a fire drill, I think. But yeah, literally evacuated the whole thing. We ended up doing the pitch at a pub, just a couple of doors down in the end, which, yeah, not too bad actually. Probably a bit happier there than in an office. The informal setting actually really helps. Again, you know, once people are able to relax a bit and you get to talk to them, that's where you get what you want out of them. You know, that's what we're after.
Yeah, that's where you learn all the little secrets and little desires that they have that they're not necessarily going to talk about in the meeting. But Sandeep, it's been great. We're just running over our time allocated. Really, real big thank you for sparing some time, especially when we're all running around so busy during the COVID-19 epidemic. I'd like, if I may, to go back and spend another 15 minutes with you at some future point in time, talking about the development side, if I may. But Sandeep, thanks again. It's been really a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Yeah. Cheers, John. Talk to you later.